So as you know, the overarching like heading or it for the conversation series is essentials for early childhood. So when we talk about caring for the environment, that's a perspective we're taking, is how do we create environments that our children come into in a way that really nourishes them and all their senses. And Anke is taking a first look at what might not come immediately to mind, but in terms of an environment that is the time that holds us, the temporal environment, how we shape the days, how we shape the months together.
So our intention with this conversation series obviously is to have a conversation around or stimulate conversations even between you at home. When you go home, you should always have taken something that struck you or surprised you. So you have to be ready that sometimes you will bring unusual things. Like last time, I hope you went home and I hope you thought about the worms organism and how that affects us and what that means. So we sat down and looked at all of your notes from last time. Remember when you wrote down what does love and worms really mean for you? And when we read through them, it was very interesting because they all directed us into the topic of this evening. How does the environment really nourishes the senses, and what does the environment really do for us? So how do we relate to it? And it creates these memories. And there were lots of memories about cooking and the grandmother and the soft lap and the cold snow at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the real sensory experiences that left an impact and that come from the environment that was actually then prepared for you in those days, or that you were able to experience. So when Jane and I put our heads together, obviously the obvious things come up first, and then we were digging a little bit deeper and said, let's bring something that shakes you a little bit up in the beginning, so you're not immediately falling asleep. You make it into our artistic activity, and then when we engage in some warmth there, maybe we can become a little bit more dreamy. So in our conversation, we divided our topic into environment. There's a temporal environment and a spatial environment. And when you now study quantum physics, and you can also study Einstein, and there's this space-time that's like bent, and all of these things where you really have to wrap your mind around. I will not bring that to you, but I want to bring, from the place of the temporal environment, I want to bring really to you what rhythm really means. And I want to invite you to come with me a little bit on a journey to consider how do we as human beings measure time? Obviously, we do it like this, right? So in our classrooms, we don't do it like this. When a child says, what time is it? And I say, oh, it's 12:03, it really doesn't mean anything. And even if I say 5 more minutes to play, for a 3-year-old has essentially no meaning, because a 3-year-old is not measuring the time like this. 3 minutes can be 3 hours or 3 seconds. And you see that when they sometimes refer to yesterday, and they really mean 2 days ago or last week. So time is something that's much more fluid still, and it's still the question, how does a child measure time? How do we measure time? And for us in our classrooms, it's really, really very simple, because we ask, what time is it? And then somebody will say, oh, it's rest time. Oh, it's playtime, it's cleanup time. It's time to go to the park. And the beauty of this kind of time measuring is that it lives in us. And why can we measure time like that? Why is it possible for us to measure time in this way? We weren't born with a watch on our wrist, right? We learned it eventually, and we adjust to it. And they can even steal an hour from us in spring and give it back to us in autumn, and we all obey, right? We go with the flow and we just adjust our device if we still have to adjust it. We have a lot of devices that we do not any longer adjust. And last year I had a parent who came in spring and was so disoriented because it was in autumn and the child had woken up an hour earlier. Why would the child wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was supposed to wake up at 6, but the child woke up at 6. It's just that the iPhone had adjusted to the new time, but the parent wasn't aware of it. And it was really very sweet to experience that, because it showed very clearly that we rely on this external time. But we have an internal time. We call it an inner clock. And it's really very fascinating, and in medicine it's studied to a great deal, and it happens for us on many, many levels. So I want to take you very briefly on a very small journey to consider all of the times that live in us and how time really makes us healthy, but out of our own inner time. So we have this very big, the bigger picture of the time of a year. How does our physical body experience a year? So this is something where we either mature, right? Your child grows 6 inches a year, or gains 5 pounds a year. At my end, it's like going like this every year a little bit, right? So you shrink a little bit, and maybe your eyesight gets a little worse. And I'm not filling you in anymore secrets about the beauty of getting older, but there is a time, the yearly time. We also experience monthly rhythms, especially as women. We are very much connected to the moon cycles and these monthly rhythms. We have weekly rhythms, which we sometimes really don't realize, but in olden times they lived much more with us. When we had on Saturday or Sunday or whatever religion we are, we would go to church, and then whatever Monday was the day to churn the butter, and Tuesday was a day to take the laundry to the river and wash the laundry. So it's more in our feeling realm that we experience the week. Then obviously we have a daily rhythm, right? And we are very happy when we can, even as adults, obey that. We go to bed at a certain time, we wake up at a certain time, and it's so beautiful that we can do that going to sleep, waking up again, right? Going through the whole day and doing our daily rhythm, and then in the evening we can go back to sleep. So we have our hourly rhythm. So within the hour, it's more our metabolic system that we experience. Then we have in the minutes level. This is where we experience our breathing, our heartbeat, right? Like my heart beats 90-some beats per minute, which is a little fast, but some people have a 50 per minute. We breathe 12 times a minute. And then you can go to the second or millisecond level, and that is then our nerve sense system, right? How our nerves fire, how they then rest before they fire again. So we are all bound up in all of these rhythms in our physical body, and that makes us experience well-being or not well-being, right? If you don't sleep at night, it's not doing your rhythm so well. Or if you run too fast, I am getting out of breath, I don't feel so well then. In a healthy rhythm, we find our place in the world. And without rhythm, we would actually not exist, right? Everybody who once had arrhythmia that knows it. It's really disturbing when your heart all of a sudden jumps and skips beats, and so you couldn't do that. If you wouldn't breathe normally, you could not exist. If your brain doesn't fire, like an extreme example is a seizure, right? You're very unwell. So we rely very, very heavily on all of these rhythms that make us experience time. In World of Education, we say the young child needs to learn in the first 7 years of life, needs to learn how to breathe and how to sleep. It's very profound. It sounds very banal, but it is very profound. And when I had my children, and I was so happy, I had my first son, I had him on a really beautiful schedule with 2 naps a day, and I felt extremely accomplished. And what does he do? He outgrows his 2 naps, right? So all of a sudden, after I had adjusted for, I don't know, 4 weeks or 2 months, so maybe it was a little longer, all of a sudden the rhythm changed and I had to adjust again. So the children learn how to sleep, and when children are little, they don't sleep the way we sleep. We really learn to sleep, and it's important to cultivate that, to bring this rhythm to the child, and then they have their inner clock, right? They always wake up at the same time, and if they don't, then something is wrong. Either our iPhone changed the time, or your child is sick or not well, or has an upset stomach, or needs to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Something is off. So to learn how to breathe and how to sleep. In school, what we try is really to teach how to breathe. And it sounds a little silly. I'm not sitting down with your children and say, now we breathe in for the count of 4, we hold for the count of 4, we breathe out to the count of 6, or whatever rhythms you want to do. But we still use rhythm as something that is, it's a central pedagogical tool for us. So what do we understand by rhythm? Rhythm is that something similar happens with repetition, but it's not the same. So rhythm is not rigidity. Rhythm is always able to adjust, right? When you run, your heartbeat increases. If it wouldn't, you would faint much faster than you faint without your heartbeat adjusting. So rhythm, and for me it's important that we distinguish between rigidity and rhythm. And it's important to say that it is similar, because once you have established a rhythm, that rhythm will be altered. And our days in our classrooms are very rhythmical, and they are altered by everyday events. Right? Somebody comes in and I found a leaf in the park on the way to school, so there's still the rhythm there, but the leaf will find its place into the classroom. So I want to say something about repetition, briefly, because we as adults often don't really realize how important repetition is. Because we are living in a time where we do something once and that's enough, and then we're over it and we do the next thing and we move on. But it's really for young children to learn, and even for us adults, when you have let's say you have a spiritual practice, you do that also repetitively. If you do it once, it doesn't really do anything. If you go to the gym and you want to build up muscles, and you go once, it doesn't really help you, right? This is why I don't go to the gym, because I go to the gym so often, and I think I couldn't do that. But repetition is very important. And Henry David Thoreau said something about repetition that I want to share with you, because it's not only about repetition of physical events, but also repetition of our intellectuality. So he said, a single footstep will not make a path. So a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to determine our lives. And whenever I'm a little tired of repetition, I remind myself how important that is, and even Henry Thoreau pointed that out. So what is rhythm then doing? Why do we need rhythm? Because rhythm is a bridge between the past and the present. It gives us the opportunity to move in a flow. And we depend on it for something that you could call regeneration. And it not only comes in sleep. We all know that we go to sleep, that's a rhythm, we go and sleep, we regenerate, we wake hopefully up refreshed, and we can head out again. So regeneration and how it's connected to rhythm, I want to give you another little verse by Robert Sardello, which I love very much, because it's about the heart, and it brings our it brings our attention really to this this being of regeneration. So the heart hesitates briefly before the next beat. It stops for a split second before going on, because with a mind of its own, it knows that the key to regeneration lies in the moment of uncertainty, in that ever-present gap which remains open to the unknown, even as it is bridged by every next beat. So even if the next beat comes, and the heart knows the next beat comes, there is this moment of possibility. Even if our free play is followed by cleanup time, there is that possibility of something new happening within the rhythm. So rhythm is something similar that repeats itself, but it's not rigidity. So it gives us the opportunity for growth and for change. And that is where we live in. What do children really experience in the rhythm of our days? They experience security. So when they come and in the beginning of the school day, they don't really know the daily rhythm. They have to learn it. After a week, they know that when they come in, we cook our meals and we play. And at a certain point, I start taking a toy and I'm starting to put it away. And the little boy in my class was always very eager and loves rhythm. He will say, "Is it time?" And I say, "It is time." And then he starts, "It's time to put our toys away." And then we all start cleaning up. So what does he experience by doing that? He experiences that he knows what's happening in the world. He finds meaning. He can understand the world. And in psychology now, this that the world is understandable, meaningful, and manageable is referred to as a sense of coherence. As human beings, we appreciate a sense of coherence. And when we don't have that, because the form around us is diluting or is changing, like during the pandemic, we feel unwell. We feel disoriented. And we are adults, so we should be able to live with this kind of discomfort. Little children are not yet so mature as we are, not that I can live with this level of discomfort, but I'm supposed to, but little children are not. They really need to know what's coming. And by having a strong daily rhythm, you also not only give them the opportunity to feel very good about what they know and what they can do, you also don't have to say good job any longer, because they know that they know, and they know that they are smart, and they know that they can handle themselves. When they know at dress-up time that they finally can put on their own shoes and their own jacket and their own gloves, and they can zip up this sticky zipper, they come to you and they say, "I did it." And they don't want to hear you say, "Wow, you did a good job." You just look at them and you say, "You did that sticky zipper." And they smile from one cheek to the other, and they know exactly that they did something wonderful, and they did the next step in their development. So children love this strong routine, and when they have it, when things then happen that are not within the routine, they have the inner stamina to adjust to these moments. We always say they live up to something challenging. So we face very challenging moments at times that are very unpredictable at times. They call them fire drills, right? We have to do them, and we try to do them in the most humane way, and we want to learn through them, but they disturb our rhythm. As the children are now used to fire drills, they know the bell will ring twice. We hold our ears and we hold onto our little rope. We walk outside, we come back, and as soon as we come back, they go back into wherever we have left off. It's as if it didn't happen, right? But they only can do that because the rhythm is living so deeply in them that they're very comfortable with what they are doing. And I'm not saying that children always only have to be comfortable. They also strive for the next step. They strive for the next rhythm. And it's interesting that as human beings, we do that also. So the young child has a very different ratio of breathing and heartbeat. And only around the age of 9, they adjust their rhythm to the adult rhythm of 3 to 1. Before they have a higher heartbeat to the breathing, in relationship to the breathing. And it's interesting that we do these adjustments out of our physical, out of our inner knowledge. Nobody tells us that. The body does that by itself. I want to add, I think, one more thing about the daily rhythm and what we want to accomplish with a rhythm. When you think about the rhythm in your home, right? So at our age that we are 3, 4, 5, we're very young, the rhythm really circles around meals and sleep. Right? So we love our meals and we have our mousy snack in the morning that comes directly after cleanup, makes us strong enough to go into our circle journey. And then we have our snack, and then we have our lunch. These are our 3 meals we have in our time here. And when we stay for Robin's Nest, we have another snack at the end of Robin's Nest. So we have one rest time in the morning, a short one after we had circle time, and we have a longer one after lunchtime. Younger children take a nap in the afternoon, and even younger ones 2 naps during the day. So that's this rhythm. And in our rhythm, when we then align our activities, we always plan them that there is an activity that allows us to breathe in, and an activity that allows us to breathe out. So I wouldn't have the animated puppet show that we always have in our classrooms directly after the circle. So there's always something that is calm, and then something that lets us go out again. So when we come in the morning, playtime is a real out breath. So we really, really go out, and then we come back in for our mousy snack. We go back out in circle. We come back in for rest time and morning snack. Then we go back out to the garden. So it goes in and out. And even we as adults, when we have a day where we can do that, we feel in the evening, we feel less stressed out. If we have a day with one meeting after the other, and we're running late from one to the other, by the time midday comes, we're already out of breath, because our day is not rhythmical. We cannot choose that, but luckily for our children, we can create that. And I want you really to think about that for your weekends, to really make your day, because on the weekends, most likely, you also want a little bit of an in-breath. Right? So there could be a time after lunch where you just sit and everybody reads, right? There are some in traditional families, some people like to read the newspaper still, or somebody likes to do a little bit of handwork, or something that's calm. Just read a book. So this in-breath, out-breath. And just very briefly, we don't only have a daily rhythm, obviously, here. There's also a weekly rhythm, which you also can think about. Every day we have a different snack. Every day we have a different lunch. And yes, these things repeat themselves. And yes, that is not necessarily what you do when you're in college or graduate school, or when you're a single person living all by yourself. You will not have this kind of not necessarily of a weekly rhythm, but we have that, and it suits us, because then if the child asks, what's today for lunch, and I say, oh, today is a pesto pasta day, they will say, oh, nice, right? There's no conversation, because we don't have to discuss it. I want pesto pasta today or not. We know there's a certain amount of meals, and they come in a certain order, and it's something nice to do at home. I don't preach rigidity, but a rhythm, and it helps. Like some people have every morning oatmeal, and they don't get tired of it. I think it's not a bad idea. It's easy to prepare, and you can always spice it up with seasonal fruit, or in the winter you make it more cinnamon. You can change it. So this weekly rhythm. We also have a weekly rhythm with our artistic activities, and you could also think about that at home, right? Monday could be laundry day, or if you want to do it Sunday, you do it Sunday.
Are you calling laundry artistic?
It's a very artistic activity, or domestic activity. Good. But it's a statistic. When I thought I know you, it's very.
I'm sure you're alone.
It's very yes. So you can bring that into your home life, and there's a shopping day, so you don't. Your child learns it, and the whole family lives in a rhythm. And by doing that, it's often also that you avoid just negotiations, right? And you avoid to have to discipline, because we all know today is a day where we do the laundry. Today is a day where we wash the floors or do the vacuuming, and the children like to help. That's the nicest thing in my class right now. When Miss Patricia starts to set the table in the morning, there are 1 or 2 children every single morning running over and say, "Can I help? I want to do the napkins now. I want to do the spoons. Can I do the cups?" And the spoons are already taken. And I think that is really, it's a wonderful, wonderful way that children can feel that they're part of the life that happens around them, in their environment. They're part of this. And then we obviously have a yearly rhythm in our classes, and you know that through our festivals, and we just had this our beautiful Lantern walk, and I really hope that you all will use your lanterns for your Thanksgiving weekend and light them in the windowsill. It was really very, very beautiful to make them and to integrate the seasons into them, and then to take them to the garden all together and have a communal event. So seasons and festivals make our yearly life. And maybe at another point we will talk about what happens between these different elements of the rhythms, which we call transitions, where there is another artistic approach that one can have. But that's beyond us today, but be aware that when you plan a rhythm, you need to also take care of transitions. And maybe we can weave that into one of our next conversations. Serious. It's the ideal transition is a flow. And when you don't have a flow, then you know you can still work on that transition. So this is as much as I wanted to bring about the rhythm, about repetition, about the temporal environment that we try to care for, and about our inner clocks, and that they're really very reliable. They suit us very well, down into our nerve senses.
You've done a wonderful job showing this breathing in and out. I have to remind myself also this breathing. And I think, extending this idea, as well as like the quiet, coming together in a quieter way, and then the active play. Like, I think it's important as parents and in home life to also have these times when you're very social together, and when you have time yourself, and when your children can have time by themselves. Not totally, perhaps you're nearby, but it's really something to learn, to take time to play, to look at a book all alone, and that's something that I think children have more and more trouble with, perhaps even post-pandemic, because they're used to being together with their family very closely, and having that attention all the time. And so to learn to take their time alone is part of that learning to breathe. It's not something we can do in a school so much. We can take small corners and perhaps observe a child playing alone in the garden a little bit, but at home, that's something I really encourage as part of that, learning to breathe and having those inner and outer times. I think you also sort of illustrated beautifully how that coherence, that understanding breeds confidence in young children. And when I know how it goes, it allows them to take on more responsibility, do more, and to feel really good about that. I as a parent of young children, when my children were small, I found that it wasn't always easy at all to keep a consistent rhythm in the home. But where I did succeed and where I did try, it actually after a period of establishment, really freed me more in energy and in time. Like for example, I did have a menu for like evening meals, and my menu was so simple. Like Monday, rice. Tuesday, pasta. Wednesday, I don't remember. I think it was like taco night or something. But rice could be anything, right? And I didn't have to stick myself into only making like the one dish. One day it was fried rice, and then we had like stir fry with rice, and then we had chicken and rice soup or whatever. It's like that it contained the one thing was the consistency, and I didn't spend as much time like planning ahead or thinking about or whatever. What are we gonna do? What are we gonna have? And I've let it go now, but I think my boys actually internalized rhythm enough that now, they're starting to prepare meals themselves, and they actually took on this like pattern, that it's still Wednesday is still pasta. And then they're like, what are you gonna cook? Oh, pasta. Oh yeah, okay. And we know we have it. It's there. It's simple, and it doesn't take a lot of mental preparation and energy to just make it happen. Which is something we just sometimes need to make things happen. And simplicity is really like a healthy and nourishing thing. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Many of you seen this book, Simplicity Parenting. This does have a chapter on rhythm, which is a lovely read. It also has a big emphasis on the physical or spatial environment that we create for our children. And this one is particularly about in the home. And it's something that I struggle with. I'm a maximalist. I like to collect things. I come from a long line of hoarders, and so does my husband's family. Like when my children were born, we were like inundated with like this toy and that toy, and they have to have them play with this because I played with it 60 years ago. So I came from early adulthood with lots of travel and living out of backpacks, and all of a sudden I had small children, and I had mountains of things, mountains of stuff. And I sort of went with it for a while, but it started to feel really like oppressive. That we had all these things, and my children were like the first one is too small to really understand or play with it, but I still had it, and we had to move it around and trip over it. And so I started to really think about that, and this is before I knew anything about Waldorf education. I just felt, I've traveled, I've seen kids all over the world living with like this much stuff. Why do my kids have this, and do they need that? And my answer in myself was no, they don't need that. And so I started to, simplify and just live with less. And part of what drew me to Waldorf education was this idea that, we bring to children what is simple, what is good, and that they don't need more and more and more and more. But as I said, I'm still a maximalist. I still love exploring different things. I still love bringing, things to children that are exciting for them or new for them that they want to experiment with. And I don't think that those two things have to, a little bit of simplicity and less and exploration of what beautiful things are out there in the world. I don't think they can coexist. I think they can coexist. But we need to, as parents and educators, be the boundary holders, be the creators of healthy environments for our children. And it's where we live with so much, it is hard to be that boundary holder at times. It really is. It's a daily sort of struggle, thinking about, do we need this? Do we need that? What do we need? And so, I think like if you look at childhood over time, you can just pace yourself. Like there's time for them to explore so many things. It doesn't have to be all at once. You start with the very simple, and you just like build on and move on. If we're done with something, it can go, or it can be put away and come back. You know. So there's like a lot of people, bloggers and writers talk about like cycling toys out so that you keep your environment a little more clean, a little more simple, and a little less sensually overwhelming for the young child. You don't, but as you are doing this sort of cycling through and keep trying to keep a beautiful and simple environment, it doesn't have to be a fight. Actually, I managed to avoid fighting with my children most of the time just by realizing that I didn't have to go to them and ask their permission to get rid of something. If I saw that there was no real love or attachment for it, it could just be put away. Most often, I did not consider it again, didn't think about it again, didn't ask about it again. If something had a connection for them, I would of course, like it didn't have to be a fight. They could revisit with that. But I think we overestimate how attached children are to certain things or how much they need. And so we ask them, do you think you want to keep playing with this? They'll say yes, most probably. But then they may not touch it for months and months. So I think you have confidence in yourself in creating the kind of environment that you want to see, and that has. I don't want to set rules or talk about the way that different rules and things are set by many in their early education. Feel like you should have this, and they have to have this for their development, or they should never have this. Like, no plastic toys or no plastic dolls or whatever. I don't think that those things are particularly useful because they don't apply to everybody. You have to make your own choices in your creation of your home environment in particular. But I would say that encouraging or like considering what goes into making something. Is it made with love? Is it made with natural materials that are renewable? Is it something that is perhaps momentarily beautiful but devastating to the earth? Those kind of things I think we should all be considering. Let me just see what else I wanted to talk about. So there is plenty of time for complexity as they grow. In early childhood, the simple, unformed, or things that can really be used with imagination is what we try to put in the classrooms. Some exceptions, and there's always room for exceptions. If there's a need because of a child's strong interest in something or a developmental need, there's always room for exceptions. And finally, I guess, in terms of creating environments, I like to say that we live in, an environment which is New York City. We go with our children to many physical locations which are less than ideal, which are overstimulating, which are difficult for them to understand. What with the coherent, manageable, which are totally unmanageable.
Meaningful, manageable.
Right, many environments that we have to, you know, confront that don't meet those criteria, and that takes something from us to deal with, and it does for the children too. So, you know, in balancing your rhythm, where you know that they've had to confront something like that, then taking them back to a place that does feel manageable, meaningful.
And meaningful, manageable, and
you know what I mean. So taking after those experiences, having then the balance of to reset in a place that doesn't have them, that feels safer, that feels more manageable, where they can have that coherence, the confidence that comes from it is important. And also, you know, it's hard in this city to go out and really enjoy the natural world in the same way that we might if we lived, you know, I don't know, somewhere upstate or wherever. But it's also like just so nourishing to take that time outside and in natural spaces. And I wanted to throw to Jeannie. Can come take the chair, Jeannie. No, you won't be on the.
I'll scoot.
Okay. To Jeannie's, you know, love and strength in outdoor education.
This is a great chair.
She's close to the earth, you see.
I gotta stay connected. Yeah, I think that, you know, the benefits of connection to a natural environment have been documented many, many times over, and I have shared resources and articles, and we'll share them throughout the year. But we know as human beings we need to have that connection to this physical place that we all come from in some way. You know, again, whatever your personal belief is, we have a connection to the physical place we're here on. And one of the things that's really important for me working with young children outdoors is having them see our environment as another living being that we're connected to, you know, many living beings, but that when we go into the natural world, as much as we're getting from that experience, in terms of nervous system, relax, and fun for the children. Today we were all raking the leaves together and jumping in the leaves, so you all got a lot of leaf matter at home. You're welcome. You're welcome. But as much as we're getting from that it's not a one-way street, and that those seeds, if we plant them, you know, from the child's very youngest age, there, you know, it is documented that grows a human being who then has a connection. They're not all going to become natural biologists and go out and study, you know, and they might. In school they might, but that they will have an appreciation and an understanding of our symbiotic relationship with the world around us. And so when we're in the garden, we are stewards of the place. We're not just taking, we're giving back, and we're caretaking. And so one way, you know, when you're out in Central Park or Prospect Park or El Jardín, I love to go to Forest Hills Park. That's one of my favorites in Queens, up by me. And a way to have a give and take with the environment, you know, that depends on your comfort level, but, you know, there's something as simple as just taking a moment in the natural space after you've run and played and gotten out, had your out breath, to have an in breath, and notice something around you and have a moment of gratitude for something you notice. It's a practice we do in the kindergarten every day. We have a gratitude circle, and it's not always about, I let it be about our favorite foods, our favorite animals, our favorite colors. You know, we really expand, but then often we come back to, what's one thing in the garden you see today that you're feeling thankful for? So it's reciprocity that's not so much an action, but an acknowledgement and understanding. A more actionable offering would be to bring a garbage bag with you and, you know, do some trash pickup. We're human beings. There's a lot of us. We live in this, you know, incredibly beautiful place, but we do make garbage. So again, that's your comfort level and the age of your child. It's not always safe or appropriate. But when we started going to the garden, really like intensely during COVID. I was in teacher training, and the other instructors were all worried about the hazards in the natural environment. When you teach outdoors, there's hazards, and they were all coming to class talking about barbed wire and brambles and maybe there might be a bear nearby. And I was like, well, our biggest concern is that children really love to help me collect the broken glass, and so that's something we have to do. In New York City, we're really concerned about all the broken glass and drug paraphernalia. And they were all very amused, but luckily in the garden, we don't have to worry too much about that. But so that's an action of caring for the environment that you can do, that you can take. And then, again, as adults, we can inform ourselves about ways to support our local environment. There's a lot of feelings around this, but the lanternflies who have arrived, who are an invasive species, or a new species who are now living in our bioregion, while we cannot or maybe do not even want to fully exterminate them, the offering that I can give to support the environment as it adapts to this new arrival is to do some scraping of the eggs off the trees, or to take a few of them and put them in a little jar and then don't let them go. To get to support my natural ecosystem, to give it a chance to bounce back, because again, we're not going to eliminate an entire species. There's not so many of us, and there's many of them, and do we want to? That's a whole philosophical question we won't get into tonight. But those kinds of gestures, we as adults can inform ourselves, and then bring it to your children in a way that feels age appropriate and not overwhelming. And that's also, I would just say, about caring for the environment. I know we're almost at time, but there's so much that we as adults now have to process with the change in our climate and the sort of way the earth is changing and the way humanity is affecting that. And again, everybody is certainly welcome to your own belief around this, not trying to preach. But I know that it can feel really overwhelming and scary, and one of the things that I know is that the young child, of course, cannot process that in any way, shape, or form, as we as adults are like, what? And so the reminder of giving yourself that moment for an in-breath when you've just received a lot of overwhelming or upsetting information in whatever form. And then if your child is perceiving, because in the class we know they can perceive if something upsetting has happened, and they've sensed it from us in any way, and then finding a way, to share it with them that doesn't feel unmanageable, unmeaningful, or meaningless, or
not understandable.
Not understandable.
It's
so
not a negative of all of them. Positive.
Thank you. So yeah.
That would be incoherent.
Incoherent. That would feel incoherent to them. But yeah, a tiny little bit. Thank you all. Thank you, Jane and Anke. But to care for our natural environment. And we'll go on more later this year.
The idea of stewardship is also useful, in our indoor spaces too. That we try to take care. I've been on it. This week I've been fixing lots of toys, which is really, and just the interest that is taken in that process is incredible. We don't have to be so disposable with things. That learning about repairing and caring is also like just it has a magic, and they can take it really very very to heart, that something is worth fixing and worth caring for.
Thank you, Jane.